Oh boy, difficulty in Souls games. This ought to be fun. So the embargo for the Lies of P Overture DLC has now lifted, and a bunch of new info is dropping. Everything from new weapons, bosses, how long it will be, and much more. But instead of just covering all the new info, because if we're being honest, there are multiple videos up from people who have actually gotten to play it, so I'll leave a couple links in the description of the big names so you can go check it out for yourself and hear it straight from the source. But I want to zero in on one specific detail that has come out, because it has sparked a broader discussion within the Soulslike community, and I think it's an interesting one. So the detail in question is the fact that the Lies of P DLC will be bringing difficulty options to the game. And this will not only be for just the DLC, there will also be a free patch that will add adjustable difficulty to the base game as well. So this new info has brought up the question once again, should there be difficulty options in Souls-like games? And this topic always brings out the, how should I say this, passion in the fan base. So be sure to drop by the comment section, it's sure to be a good time. But I want to weigh in on this topic and give you my thoughts as a huge Lies of P fan and a huge fan of the Souls-like genre in general. So let's start by laying out the two sides of this argument. On the one side, you have the people that are of the opinion that as long as it is a single player game, then it doesn't hurt anything to have difficulty options. After all, why should we care if someone else is playing on a super easy Hello Kitty mode? If you don't want to play that way, then don't. And on the other side, we have the group that believes that difficulty options are for the weak, and if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. To these people, difficulty is something more. It is a sacred rite of passage that all players must struggle through to prove they have gotten good. And then somewhere in the middle, you have the game developers themselves that are kind of stuck there trying to toe the line between a game that feels approachable for new players and a game that scratches the challenge itch that Souls-like players are addicted to. And that's a tough spot to be in if we're being honest. I mean, they feel like if they don't make it accessible enough, they'll fail to get the sales that they need. And then on the other hand, if they make it too easy, all these Souls vets with all the YouTube channels will leave bad reviews. But I think all of this is caused by a big misconception. You see, a well-designed Souls-like game has difficulty options. Even the FromSoft Souls games do. Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Bloodborne, Sekiro, they all have difficulty options. They just aren't on a toggle or in a menu screen. They are embedded into the gameplay itself. And it is both an important part of the Souls-like experience and a testament to the genius of Miyazaki. So what do I mean by all this? The way Miyazaki designed the Souls games was to have the difficulty live within the game in the form of builds, leveling, and items. Many people play the games and pick a build and just run with it, like the Kool-Aid Man through some poor person's house. Now, I have to admit, I am in that group as well, and if you are good enough, it is definitely a viable way to play the games. But that isn't how the games were meant to be played. Miyazaki designed the games to have roadblocks at certain points. Oftentimes, those roadblocks come in the form of bosses, and they are meant to make you reevaluate your situation. Check your inventory for different weapons, consumables, or maybe even leave altogether and get stronger before you come back. Honestly, if you think about it, they're really more of a puzzle than anything else. Now, you might be asking yourself, if that is the case, why? Why approach difficulty in this way instead of the traditional way of just providing the player with multiple options to choose from? Well, the first thing, and probably the most obvious, is that it's different and unique. It sets the Souls games apart. The Souls games stood out from the crowd in part because of how the difficulty was brutally different from everything else at the time. But that is somewhat of a minor point. The second, and most important thing, has to do with immersion. Miyazaki found a genius way to pull you into the world by essentially beating you until you have to run and look for solutions. Through that, you end up exploring to find more gear, reading item descriptions to find something that can aid you, backtracking to farm levels, and studying boss weaknesses. All of these things are only possible if the difficulty is unchanging, and they provide an important element of the Souls games that immerses you almost by force into the world and makes you do things that you wouldn't necessarily do. The difficulty serves as guide rails that lead you toward the experience the developers intended you to have, and oftentimes you end up thanking them. It's a so much deeper way to play a game than just toggles and cutscenes. Now look, it is possible to make a Souls-like game with difficulty levels in it, and I don't necessarily think that it breaks the game or makes it not a Souls-like or anything like that. But I do think that the best Souls-likes are designed in a way to where they don't need selectable difficulty. The whole idea of being able to formulate and create a character or build that melts bosses or matches your playstyle or whatever it may be really becomes meaningless if the difficulty is not hard enough to make that actually useful. If the difficulty is easy, it really doesn't matter what build you make or what weapon you use or what armor you have on. It all just becomes pointless. Sure, you might look different, or you might like the way the weapon swings, or the cool blood that's dripping off of it, or whatever you might think of it. But in actuality, that weapon, that armor, that character really makes no meaningful impact in the game or how you play it. Which is why I believe that Miyazaki does not put selectable difficulties into his games. And I think the misunderstanding around why selectable difficulty levels weren't in the Souls games to begin with, and how the difficulty was actually designed into the gameplay, is much of why this question is so controversial. It's not true that all Souls-likes should never have difficulty options. And it's equally not true that adding difficulty options affects nothing and every game should have them. The FromSoft difficulty style is part of the DNA of the Souls formula. In a way, it's a mini subgenre in and of itself. And changing it also changes the fundamentals of what Miyazaki founded, which isn't always bad, but it is risky and has to be done a certain way with a specific intention in mind. So in short, difficulty options are not my favorite. Personally, I don't like them. And I think that they are often not the best way to design difficulty in a Souls-like. But I also don't think that it's as serious a problem as some would say, and it has certain perks that developers sometimes opt to take advantage of, a larger player base being the most prominent one. After all, NeoWiz, the developers of Lies of P, originally did not put difficulty options in the game, and they even said that they didn't think that they should be in Souls-like games. But in a recent article, when asked about the addition of them in the DLC, they had this to say: "We have a lot of feedback from customers and from our developers. So by making development adjustments and introducing these difficulty options, we can offer the experience to different types of players. This broadens the base." So you can see that expanding the player base and making the game accessible to as many people as possible is a real concern for even developers that might agree with the hardcore Souls-like fans. So although I don't like it, I have to admit, it's not the end of the world, and I don't think it's something that we need to pitch a fit over or get our panties in a bunch. I think there's room for both kinds of Souls-likes, and although my favorites are the ones that do not have difficulty options, and I think that there's really good reasons not to put them in there, that's not the only point of view out there, and there are many other players that would disagree with that, and that will flock towards Lies of P now that it does have difficulty options. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What do you think of selectable difficulty? Does it have a place in the Souls-like genre? Let me know in the comments. But for now, I have a Rivers of Blood build to get back to.